189. Let's get to the third Transformers film, which is Transformers Dark of the Moon. Came out in 2011, done by Bay once again. Stars mostly the same cast, except it also has Rosie Huntington Whiteley, who replaces not character, but I guess for the love interest, instead of Megan Fox. It also stars Patrick Dempsey, Frances McDormand, John Malkovich, and a few others, so a pretty decent cast. And the synopsis is the Autobots learn of a Cybertronian spacecraft hidden on the moon and race against the Decepticons to reach it and learn its secrets. Well, as I mentioned with the cast, the big thing with this movie is before this one really got into development, Megan Fox had compared outwardly, publicly, working with Michael Bay was like working with Hitler. And whether or not she was serious or not, there's some dispute on whether she decided to leave because she didn't want to do another movie with him. But it's also been brought up Steven Spielberg, who is an executive producer on all these movies, fun fact, suggested to Michael Bay to fire her. So hard to say. I could see either really being true, but she did not come back. Which, I mean, I like Megan Fox in the first two films, so in some ways it's unfortunate, but not really. There's not a lot to that character. I would say it's slightly better than two, not by a whole lot, but I think it's a little bit more entertaining, a little bit lighter on its feet. Even some of the Michael Bay isms that I don't like that I've already discussed are not as prevalent in this. Maybe that's wrong, but I felt like it was watching a lot of these fairly close together. First thing though, some bad specifics about this one. The deep fake effects with the presidents, I think it's JFK, Nixon, and then you also see, or quote unquote see, Obama. That stuff looks horrible. And I appreciate them trying to do that way before most people were. Nowadays it's more prevalent, whereas back then it wasn't. But digitally, effects quality really, really horrendous. Like it looks so fake to the utmost degree. So I think that opening, the historical flashbacks, that kind of thing, does not hold up whatsoever. Also, I don't mind the idea of Sam Witwicky trying to find a job and that being the young adult version of him and getting out of college, and then also having this crazy past that most people aren't aware of and dealing with that whole dynamic. I think that's all right. But the office that he gets a job at, where he's hired by John Malkovich, who, I mean, I like John Malkovich, but the writing for all those characters is so obnoxious. And the whole stuff with Ken Jeong is ridiculous and really does not work for me at all. I don't mind Rosie Huntington Whiteley, who I think I've only seen her in Fury Road besides this, maybe one other thing, but she's okay. She's not amazing, but as you would expect, the camera is shooting her from absolutely the most flattering sexual angles, but come to be expected with all that I've said. As I mentioned earlier, the action is much stronger, specifically even though it's absurd, the Chernobyl sequence with that serpent transformer moving through the different structures, and there's the tentacles. I think all that is pretty interesting, and some of the POV shots with the different soldiers with the masks on, I think that's pretty cool. Then there's also towards the middle of the movie, there's that highway chase where one of the Transformers hooks onto another one with these chains or something, and he's being dragged along almost like he's water skiing or something. I think that's a pretty cool idea. And then where Bumblebee grabs Sam midair, and there's that really epic slow-mo Michael Bay shot. Then, more than anything, it goes without saying, the Chicago sequence at the end does save the movie somewhat. Even though it takes so long to get there, I feel like the middle of this movie really, really drags. And it feels like so much is happening and there's so much noise, but really, in actuality, not much is happening. One thing that I can say about this movie, and really I'd say the whole franchise, the Michael Bay ones, that I can't not be impressed by is, to me, in the Chicago sequence, the look of Transformers and the ships moving through the city, the effects and the lighting and the shading and the textures are so realistic looking that it actually seems like, especially in these wide angle shots, it actually looks like I'm watching a Transformer move through Chicago in real time. And I'm never thinking, oh, that's just a special effect. I think it's actually, it looks completely legit 99% of the time. And when you see the huge Transformers just walking through the streets and you see the scale of them in comparison to the buildings, like it's really well put together in that way. And so I'm always really in awe of that. And that's honestly one of the main reasons why that sequence really is good for me. Also, while I'm on that point of the effects, another great looking sequence that is another perfect example of what I was just saying, when Sam Witwicky meets the Transformers at the space shuttle station, when you see Optimus Prime and Bumblebee out in broad, vivid daylight, could not believe how good that looked. And it's almost how, if you go back to the original three Pirates of the Caribbean films, the effects in general, but like on Davy Jones, still looks way better than a lot of newer films that come out with the same level of money and all that. So kudos to Michael Bay for putting clearly all of the money in making sure those Transformers look spot on. Some other random things though, love Leonard Nimoy as the voice for Sentinel Prime, and the look of Sentinel Prime is fantastic. Love it. Frances McDormand and Patrick Dempsey are pretty decent. It's at least some star power, some good acting quality in these movies that they desperately need. Oh, and one thing that I think it's in the previous two, at least in the second one, I'm pretty sure, but in this one at least, the idea of Transformers when they're injured or hit, that they bleed green ooze. Some people, I've heard, I don't know why this is a thing, but like I hear people say, that's so unrealistic, that's so stupid. I'm like, really, that's the line. That's where you're losing me, is they shouldn't bleed. It's not that we're watching Transformers or anything come from space or whatever. It's totally ludicrous. I personally, I think it looks cool, the visual of that. Obviously, it's ridiculous, but I think visually that works for me. I have no problems with that, or whatever colors they choose, that's fine with me. The desert transformer, or he's sort of like, I guess he changes into something else. That's interesting, although it's very much a Mad Max ripoff when you first see it. I don't love how Michael Bay handles some of the alternate history stuff. I think it's a little, to me, it's a little tasteless, like with the moon landing and some of the presidential stuff. Like, it's not that that's bad inherently, it's just how he handles it feels very clunky and really not thoughtful in a way. Or like when you see the Transformers stomping on Abraham Lincoln's head from the memorial, like it's just stuff that seems really unnecessary. I mean, it's watchable, more watchable than two, but still very, very forgettable in my opinion. And we'll get to four. I think I seem to have a pretty different opinion from how people view two and three compared to how they view four and five. So I'm looking forward to talking about those very much. So that one is a heavy 2.5 out of 5.